Season 4, Episode 6, Transition Portfolios, the hardest part. In the previous episode, we explored the role of income portfolios. Income capital exists to provide coverage, reliable cash flow that supports spending without requiring constant asset sales. Over time, that coverage can grow until the portfolio begins carrying more and more of life's financial load. But between the growth portfolio and the income portfolio sits a very difficult stage: the transition portfolio. And for many investors, this is the hardest part of the entire journey. Early in a financial life, the portfolio has a very clear job: grow. It participates in the expansion of businesses. It compounds capital over long periods of time. And because the investor is still working, the portfolio does not need to support spending. This simplicity makes the structure relatively easy to maintain. Volatility is uncomfortable at times, but it is not threatening. Time is still abundant. The system has room to recover. But eventually, something begins to change. The portfolio is no longer just expanding. It is approaching the moment when it will be asked to support life. Income begins to matter. Stability begins to matter. Sequence risk begins to matter. The machine is about to carry real weight. This is where the transition portfolio appears. The transition portfolio is neither purely growth nor purely income. It must do both at the same time. It must continue expanding capital so that the system remains strong over the long run. But it must also begin producing dependable income that can support spending. And it must remain stable enough that market turbulence does not destabilize the entire structure. Balancing these forces is extraordinarily difficult. Part of the difficulty is structural. Growth assets tend to fluctuate more. Income assets tend to prioritize stability and cash flow. These characteristics do not always align perfectly. Too much growth, and the portfolio may remain volatile at the very moment stability becomes important. Too much income, and the portfolio may stop expanding enough to support a long future. The machine must now perform multiple tasks simultaneously, and that requires careful design. But the real difficulty is often psychological, because the investor must change the way they think about capital. For years, perhaps decades, the portfolio was measured primarily by growth, returns, performance, expansion. Success was defined by how much the system increased in size. But during the transition, the question begins to change. It becomes less about how large the portfolio is, and more about how reliably it can support life. That shift can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Selling or reallocating growth assets may feel like abandoning the very strategy that built the portfolio in the first place. Moving capital toward income may feel conservative, even premature, and market volatility can suddenly feel more threatening than it did before. Because the system is no longer abstract, it is becoming functional. The machine is beginning to carry real weight. This is why the transition portfolio requires patience. It is rarely a single dramatic shift. More often, it unfolds gradually. Income streams begin appearing within the portfolio. Some growth assets begin converting into income-producing assets. Coverage slowly increases. Stability slowly increases. And the structure of the machine evolves over time. Another important element of the transition stage is flexibility. No single formula works for everyone. Different lives require different structures. Some investors will transition slowly over many years. Others may move more quickly depending on their circumstances. But the guiding principle remains the same. The portfolio must evolve in a way that preserves both resilience and future capacity. When the transition is handled well, something subtle begins to happen. The portfolio becomes calmer. Income streams begin covering a meaningful portion of spending. Market volatility begins to matter less. And the system begins to feel less like a collection of investments and more like a functioning structure. The machine is now doing real work. In the next episode, we'll step back from these portfolio roles and examine a different problem that quietly undermines many financial systems: complexity. Because portfolios rarely fail from a lack of sophistication. More often, they fail because they become too complicated to manage. And complexity in financial systems often creates fragility.